Welcome to the Wisdom and Wilderness Podcast. Real men, real life, real faith. The newest podcast for men with your host, Mitch London.
All right, welcome guys. Another episode here for Wisdom and Wilderness. Real men, real life, and real faith. My guest today is Cody Jefferson. Cody, I came across not too long ago. It's only been the last few months that I've kind of discovered who you are. And immediately it was like this pull of like, yeah, this dude gets it. And I was really kind of, digging in, doing some homework, who is this guy? What's he's about? And on your website, that little first catchphrase, the what I do moment hit hard. I love it. I love some of the words in here. It says you partner with impact-driven entrepreneurs, influence to keep them from sacrificing their souls on this altar of success. And that to me just spoke volumes about your heart, kind of your mission, keep them from sacrificing their soul on that altar of success, because so many people I see get that totally mixed up. But I want to welcome you, buddy. Why don't you just tell us a little bit, who you are, kind of what you're really passionate, what you're working on right now?
Yeah. So let's go, man. So again, Cody Jefferson, dude, it's really an honor to be here. I love getting connected with men who are on a similar mission and similar path, similar journey of just leading people into being the best versions of themselves by leading, again, themselves first and initially. So a little about me. I was a pastor for 13 years. And over this, it was a beautiful season of ministry and got to do some really amazing things, meet some really amazing people. Transitioned into the coaching and entrepreneurial space right around 3 years ago. Nice. And it's been an insane journey ever since. I transitioned out of ministry, due in a large part to my need to take time for myself and discover who I was outside of the, again, soul sacrifice I made on what at that time was the altar of my ministry.
Right.
And, right. So when I was in ministry towards the latter part, I went through a few different things. I went through a divorce. I lost 8 family members and friends, led all those funerals right within the course of a year. Still showing up, still being the yes man, and this was all me, right? It was this like affirmation addiction. I had gotten used to the role that I was playing. I felt like I couldn't say that I wasn't okay or that things needed to stop, that I needed to take a break because like the machine would stop moving forward, or if I'm not useful, am I worth anything? It came to a head when I ended up going septic and got put in the hospital, 106 fever, almost died. Like my body was like, no, we're done.
Oh man.
Right? Like you just can't keep putting on the show. And I know for so many of your listeners, and for men especially, you will resonate with that. Like you just, like there's this modality and this mentality and culture that like, oh, you just keep going, you man up, you just, when the tough gets going, you put your boots on and you pray a little more. Like, dude, I was a pastor. I had mastered praying.
Yeah.
Like I had written curriculum on praying. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm the one who did it as a career. Like I knew all the verses. I knew what to say. I had led other people into their conversion experience. I had walked alongside tens of thousands of people. And what I recognized in that season is there was no simple prayer. Dietrich Bonhoeffer says in The Cost of Discipleship, he talks about this idea of cheap grace. And what I recognize is like, all I've been offering people is this cheap grace from this very, very naive young man who'd never really experienced anything. And then when all the walls came crashing down, like what a gift, but what an overwhelming season.
Yeah.
And
no
so
kidding. That's a total world upside down.
Which is why I stepped out of ministry. Like, no failing, nothing that would have caused me to, other than the fact like I just could not keep showing up. Like I had to stop and looked high and wide for something that, all due respect, wasn't, Wave the Master, Kirk Cameron style. Like here's how to get out of your pit. Because dude, I was in hell. Like I was in hell. I'm the guy that like was leading everybody. And then at night I was drinking just to try and sedate the level of of overwhelm and pain and frustration in my own life, right? I'm the guy that talks openly about putting a gun to my head and just praying for the guts to pull the trigger. Like, nobody wants to talk about that. We also want to talk about, well, you got to pray more. You got to dig a little deeper. Like, sometimes you have to recognize, like, this is you. You have created this. You have sacrificed everything. You have sacrificed your soul on the altar of what?
And let me, if I can interrupt you a second, what would you say, getting into what you were doing? You're in ministry for 14 years.
Yeah.
Would you say that you made ministry your identity, or would you confidently be able to say that you knew who you are outside of anything else? You just had that core knowing of who Cody was outside of this occupation or this task?
Such a great question. And for so many in ministry, they will resonate with this, especially for those who started out as young youth pastors like myself. I was 19 when I got in the game. 19. I didn't even know how to lead myself. Right. I was good on stage. I wasn't bad to look at. I was a good singer, a good guitar player, and academically I did well. So I knew how to study and then apply.
Right.
And I cared. Like, I just loved being social. I'm a high extrovert. So all of those led into being really good at what I did. Right. So there was no like burning bush moment for me. There was no dream that I had, but I knew that I loved it. I knew that I genuinely loved walking alongside people. And I loved music, and I loved connecting, and I loved those breakthrough moments. And if we're being fair, I loved the stage. I loved the attention. Right? I wasn't necessarily the most popular kid in high school. And I had walked through a pretty, traumatic childhood in some regards. In other regards, it was amazing and great, right? You kind of have both sides of the coin always. Mm-hmm. But I became conditioned to this idea of like wearing 100 different hats based on what people needed from me. And in the midst of that, really never discovered who I was outside of the role that I could play in other people's lives. Okay, am I Cody, the worship leader? Because I know what I need to say. I know what I need to play. I know how I need to lead there. Am I the youth pastor? Because I know what I need to say. I know how I need to show up. I know what that needs to look like. Am I the community pastor, the executive pastor? Am I writing curriculum? Am I traveling and speaking? I know how to wear all these hats. The problem is when you get home and you take all these hats off,
right?
You don't know who you are, because your identity gets so wrapped up in what you do. And for so many of us in ministry, you confuse and convolute the idea of calling, right? Not with showing up for yourself first and, like, love others as you love yourself. You don't have time to love yourself because loving yourself is so conditioned in the loving of others.
Right.
And so then there's God. But God's my job, and I know that God's supposed to come before my family, so my job comes before my family. So I know you want to spend time with me. I know that we have these plans, but we've got this thing at the church tonight, or I've got to keep my phone on, and I've got to keep it on ring because a student might call me at 2 a.m. or a parishioner or a church member might call me at 2 a.m. Like, this is my call in life. So I have to always be available, which in flip means I can't ever be available for you. I always have to have my phone on me. I always need to be needed. And so then you get addicted to being needed.
Yeah.
Right. And cost everything.
So during this time, and I can totally resonate with you, and there's so many men that I've spoken to that have attached that quote unquote purpose to this task that they were extremely talented at. And this purpose ended up sucking the life out of them because it wasn't coming from a place of overflow that was truly what you were designed to be doing. And so like you said, you were good. Like, you could just do things naturally. But my question is during this time frame, did this feel like, this is my, quote unquote purpose. This is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life because it comes so effortlessly. And on the opposite side of that, was it sucking the life out of you?
So yes, it was sucking the life out of me, but it was also, but because it was my purpose, like I still feel like I'm leading the same way I did. I'm just not on a church stage anymore.
Right.
But in ways I did not understand because I didn't know how to truly care for myself. I didn't know what that meant. I wasn't ever taught what that really meant. because growing up in the church, it was always serve, serve, serve from the time I was a kid, right? Like serve. How can you get involved? How can you be a volunteer? Like, how can you serve, right? I didn't understand filling up my own cup because that wasn't even language that was articulated. So did it fill me up? Absolutely. Because again, I that's part of my drive and bend, is that transformational experience with others. But in the flip side, yes, it absolutely burned me out, left me completely depleted because I didn't know how to care for myself. And I mistook a job for the call and the purpose. And the purpose is never a position.
Absolutely. So have you read the book, Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl?
Viktor Frankl, yeah.
He's got a quote in there that is one of those just punch you in the gut, open your eyes quotes. It says, man is not searching for pleasure. He is searching for meaning. When he can't find meaning, he drugs himself with pleasure. And
Absolutely.
You mentioned sedating yourself with these different things. I used to do it, back in my teenage years. I got into all kinds of stuff, alcohol, drugs, and different things.
Yeah.
As I started, I had a family. I've been married for 17 years now. I've got 4 kids. And as I started to kind of go through different phases and different seasons of life, the nature, outdoors became my drug. I would go and get away into the wilderness to avoid things. It would make me feel good because then you're not worried about stress and all these other things. But I approached these types of situations totally backwards, totally wrong. And looking back, you can kind of see it now. It's like, man, I was running from so much. There was just so many things I didn't want to truly face. So I'd take off into the woods and I'd go get quiet for a while and I'd just forget about everything. And then you come home and it's just like, boom, it smacks you in the face. And here's a freight train of all of life's troubles and struggles again.
Yeah.
So as you were transitioning, you left the ministry, you're now looking into you're doing all kinds of stuff, coaching and speaking and mentoring and just pouring into the souls of men. Yeah. How is that kind of transition for you of not coming head on with the train anymore, but blending those two things in your life of this call, this purpose, that it can no longer be just a task. It's got to take care of me before I can take care of anybody else. How did you kind of figure that marriage out, so to speak?
Yeah. I'm still figuring that out. Right. And I heard John Maxwell, I heard one time, he was leading a group of pastors, and he was still a pastor at this time. It was back when I was in ministry. And they asked, like, what is the hardest part of leadership? And he said, some of you are too young to understand this. And the older men in the room will understand full well. Leading me.
Yes.
And so I think because I've taken personal sovereignty very seriously, right? And ownership of my own life. And I've also surrounded myself with men who hold me accountable. That was when I was in the position that I was in within the church community, and it's through no fault of the church. It's me thinking that life had to look a certain way and that I needed to be perfect, or at least needed to present an air of perfection, right? Because I'm leading others, that even friends, like, I would keep at arm's length out of some sort of weird fear of being kind of found out. But I don't actually have everything together, that, like, my faith maybe at times isn't as strong as you think it is. Like, every other month I have like atheist flu, right? And so, but I can't let anyone know that because I have a very particular call I'm assigned to, or at least my perception of that. Having men in my life, someone that is not my wife, right? It's important for me to have a very, very strong relationship with my wife. But then there are certain conversations and contextualized, right, moments that I need to have with men who are on a similar path that I am. Some that are at the same stage, some that are further ahead than I am, to keep me accountable to becoming the man that I said that I would be, and the man that I'm consistently becoming every single day. So that kind of really, really no holds barred, like, immense, deep, intimate trust, which means that I have to be fully open and vulnerable of my own mess and of my own progression and where I get it wrong and where I get it right. Right. And so that has been absolutely pivotal, and recognizing that I'm now not doing this to please anyone.
Right.
And I think it's just my natural bend. I don't think this is true for everyone. But I know for me that when I was working for someone else, there was always this desire to get attaboys. Like,
Yeah.
I need to prove that I'm indispensable. I need to prove that, like, I have everything together and I have all the answers for everything. And if not, I'll like BS my way through it. And now I recognize that no, everything actually just rises and falls on me. Everything rises and falls on my leadership, my finances, my faith, my body, my family, my marriage, my friendships. Everything is a result of the choices that I make. And so removing kind of the safety net of being able to blame anyone else has been a real catalyst for me.
And that's a lonely journey to start out on. When that decision
Absolutely.
comes and it's okay, here we go. I got kind of pushed off the ledge of entrepreneurism about 5.5 years ago. My thing came from health challenges. I was in sales all my life, always achieved. I always did well. It was like, yeah, I could do this, but there was always that pit, that emptiness of like,
Yeah,
again, I'm just doing something I'm good at, but it has zero meaning in my life. It's not
sure.
something I ever want my kids to follow in my footsteps to do. And I took a break away from sales and actually got a job driving a truck for UPS. I'm like, I just need out of this world. And so here in Colorado, I took a job. It was in the mountains. I'm like, yeah, I'll go bomb around in the mountains all day long and, do this thing. How hard could it be? Of course, it's a very strenuous job if you've never done it. Slinging brown boxes all day is very tough on your body.
I imagine.
But I was going through this stressful time between my wife and I. We were at the verge of divorce. So we were as close as you can get without signing the paperwork.
Yeah.
And coming to those realizations of like, okay, how am I going to, and this was me as a man, I'm thinking in my head, how am I going to still provide for my wife and my family? Because I'm not going to let her live without income and let my kids have anything. How am I going to live without having my kids with me 24/7?
Yeah.
I know that's not going to happen where it's, I wouldn't take custody away from anybody anyway. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to live in a camper, pull my truck, get my camper up in the woods and still pay for the mortgage and still pay for everything so that my kids can still have that life. But it's just, it starts to tear you up inside.
Yeah.
And that manifested, that stress and all that crap came up as like heart problems. I started getting these phantom, they call them heart spasms.
Yeah.
Where my arteries would literally contract and make me feel like I was having a heart attack and then relax. They'd go in and they'd look, they'd do the cameras through the wrist, up through your veins, the heart catheterizations. Arteries are clear, bro. Don't know why you're having these things. Like, it was just this stress that was coming on and it shoved me off the cliff. My job, they're like, hey buddy, you can't drive a truck if you're having heart issues. It's just kind of a no-go. And so it was just this go home and figure it out and come back when you got it figured out moment. Like, okay, I've been kind of doing this entrepreneurial side gig a little bit. Full on, here we go. It's like, it's time. So it's a very lonely, can be. For me, it was super lonely because my relationships weren't great at the time. I didn't have the men in my life at that time. I was like you, I was pushing people away. I don't trust you. I don't trust your intentions. I was just in a dark place myself. So as you start to kind of figure these things out, for me, I had to hit rock bottom before I turned around and then started to get that mentorship and started to find guys that you could trust. God had to walk me through a lot of different things, a lot of, you learn those bonehead lessons the hard way. Sometimes those are the ones that stick the longest though. But that loneliness, it's such a hard thing to kind of jump off there if you don't have that surrounding. And I can say now that I have gotten my relationship with God right. I'm not cursing him. I'm not yelling at him. I'm not blaming him for all the things going on wrong in my life. My marriage is awesome. It's never been better. Like I said, 17 years now that we've been together. And it just takes everything to that next level. But I found those mentors didn't show up until I was ready. Like there was some internal rebuilding, rewiring that had to go on before these guys, I would even pay attention to them. Mm-hmm. They might've been trying before, but I was like, you're off my radar, I'm not looking at it. Did you find in your experience that you had to figure out you before those men showed up, or did you happen to have somebody come reach down and pull you out of the pit?
No, it's the way you explained it. and it was lonely. And for me, it was a little different in the sense that like I removed like a very particular way that I was living life with, like my son full time and, being married, happily remarried, by the way, with, my wife brought two amazing little girls into our home. So now we have three amazing kids and it's absolutely beautiful. But then like I lost that identity, which is and then a year later I step out of ministry. So I lose the only identity I'd had my entire adult life. And with that, because so much of relationship was contextualized by like the church, right? So when I stepped out, like I didn't still go to that. I mean, it would have been confusing for people. Like it was kind of understood how, like, if you're going to go, like you just need to go because it's going to confuse all the kids. It's going to confuse everybody. And I didn't do that season really well in terms of like the season after. I took a hard right from the church because I wanted to kind of rebrand myself, not as the pastor. So, I mean, I used a lot of 4-letter words. I was just brash and abrasive and confused a lot of people, confused a lot of students, which then further isolated me. Right. And so all the people that I had known from a very particular context, which I didn't have like a super deep relationship with in terms of really fully knowing me, but it was the only community I had known, was gone.
Right.
Right. And there was nobody like reaching out. There's nobody like, hey, how's it going? How are you doing? Like it was just because it's just not top of mind. Like you were the person that served, like you weren't the one being served. And so it took some time to cultivate those relationships and feeling a bit stung and wounded just in my own head. And honestly, not knowing how. I think for so many men, we don't actually know how to be communicators and good friends and to open up and like share how we're actually feeling with other men. And I'm not talking about, oh, you need to be soft, but like, you need to know that there are other men that are walking through the same scenario of feeling overwhelmed, of feeling like they don't have it all together, of feeling that there is a seemingly never-ending pressure to produce and to provide and to be the man and to man up and to have all the answers, and that everyone around you is exceeding and everyone else is climbing the ladder because on social media it looks that way. And there is just this, bro, in the past 3 years, I've buried 5 of my pastor friends who've taken their own lives.
Oh, that's even worse. Oh,
there is a deep isolation. And so was it hard for me? Yeah, it was. Am I grateful for it now? Absolutely. And if there's something that you listener, watcher, however you're taking in this conversation, if you are feeling alone, if you are feeling isolated, if you are feeling like you're not the man that you know you're called to be, but you don't, like, it's like you don't even know how to get there. It's like, it's like Paul talks about, like, I know what I'm supposed to do, but I don't do those things. Like, you need to understand, like, the way that you were raised, the way that we were raised, the way that the condition works, your brain doesn't care what you want. You want to be a great man. You want to tell your wife 100 million times, this is the last time. This is the last time. It's not. Because your brain doesn't know any other way. This isn't your fault. This is what you've conditioned yourself to. And the only way for you to get outside the bottle, metaphorically, or in my case, literally,
right,
was to have somebody on the outside of it reading the label to me and helping me out. Finding accountability. You have a community on Facebook, correct?
Yes.
A free group, those types of communities where people think like, well, it's got to be in my area. I've got to have somebody like locally. My closest friends, LA, Nashville, like on other sides I'm in Oklahoma, right? Like I have one very, very close friend here in Tulsa. Outside of that, they're scattered, which is the beauty of it. But that allowed me to connect with men who were on a similar path as me, and it took time. The beauty is that men that are listening to this right now, they can connect to you, and they can get involved in your community, and they can find other men who are walking through like life situations. Why? Because they know you. So they're like you.
Right. Right.
They resonate with you and your message, right? Again, like we talked about, it's, what is it? Mountains, moose, and Messiah.
Those of you who can't see, I
Judged
got
on your
this
back
giant
wall.
moose behind me on my wall.
So the quicker that men can find community and a place to belong, which is why like I so love what you're about and love this vision and this mission that you've embarked on, and which is really, it's like a ministry, right? Like, but without the church and the steeple, and without all the rules and the bylaws and this need to feel like you got to come perfect with your suit and tie every Sunday. Like this idea that you can come raw, beat up, like literally beat up. We don't care if you come in cuss. We don't care. We don't care if you come in smelling like alcohol. I don't care how you come in. Just come in because you're not alone. Guaranteed. I've been there. So let's talk about it.
Oh,
and let's
man.
talk about how to create the accountability to get you from where you are to where you want to go, because you just don't have a map to get there.
I know a huge nugget of my journey was, and you hear false beliefs, but the word that really resonated with me was truths. It's what do I hold true in my life, in my heart, that isn't actually true?
Yeah.
And so God was I was out one day just like thinking I was going to go speak to a men's retreat, and they had the camping deal. And I'm like, all right, Lord, what is it that you want me to share with these men? Because I thought I had a pretty good idea. And he's like, nope, I got something else for you to talk about. And it's like, what he told me is what stops you from climbing the mountain is not the mountain. It's the rocks in your shoes. And those rocks in your shoes are those truths that you have held on, that you have believed to be true, that aren't true. And these truths are stopping you from becoming, or stopping you from opening your eyes, or stopping you from extending that hand to somebody else that says, hey, I can help with this situation. And there was a lot of kind of rewiring that had to go down, and a lot of those face-to-face moments of what did I believe to be true growing up? What things have I been conditioned, like you talked about, even from my childhood, way, way, way back in the day? What influenced me to where I just accepted this as truth? One of my big things growing up is my dad and I, we didn't get along. Okay. I come from 5 kids. There's 2 older, 2 younger. I'm the exact middle. For whatever reason, he and I just never jived. We just were always button heads. It would cause strife. He would yell at me. My mom would yell at him for yelling at me. Then I'd yell at him for yelling at my mom. And it was just like this big circle. Our relationship has been restored and gotten a lot better now later in life. But growing up, it was just this constant battle. Yeah. But I always saw, and then my dad would get frustrated and he'd just go to his room and watch TV in his bedroom. It was just kind of always never a part of daily life for me. And things that had happened and things that my mom had told me before I was born, she said my dad didn't want any more kids. He had the 2, that's all he wanted. And she had to convince him to have me, had to convince him to have children. And subconsciously, without me realizing, I was placing power in the woman's lap, that all authority, everything stemmed from ladies. And as I started growing up and you start discovering girls and you start dating, I still had this ingrained in my brain where it's like the women had the power and I need to make sure I have the women's attention. And so I was always dating and I was always wanting to, be friends. And I can see all these patterns now, but I didn't understand the truth that I was holding in my heart, that I was believing to be true, that was influencing all of these habits and all of these different situations. And so kind of going back, like how these truths can shape or totally get us off track in life. Can you think of anything that you had these big revelation moments of like, man, for most of my life, I believed this and it was causing me to go way sideways until somebody smacked me in the head. God sat me down in a bed because I couldn't breathe anymore or whatever it was. Just those moments that you just come face to face, like, okay, let me actually explain what truth is.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's fascinating that you talk about this. What is truth, right? And granted, we have universal truth, right? Like you fall off a 2-story building, like there are certain realities that exist outside of what we believe to be true. But then, what is a belief? A belief is nothing more than a thought that we hold captive. And you hold a thought long enough, right? You get something ingrained in you long enough, it becomes your entire belief system. And we will navigate through these without even knowing it. Again, like we think about physics, the principle of least path, like light follows it, water follows it, our subconscious follows it. This idea that, like, again, the brain doesn't care. It doesn't care if you're skinny, fat, happy, sad, rich, poor, married, divorced, single. It doesn't care. All it cares about is just repeating patterns.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why people will get in relationships and they will repeat the pattern of the parents. And like, I don't want to do this. Your brain doesn't care. It's just reverting back to what it saw. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. So you have to fight for this idea that you want something to be different. And what clicked to me after doing just a lot of study on mindset and human psychology and the way that the brain works is that it doesn't actually matter most of the time how I feel, because my feelings are nothing more than triggers of thoughts and beliefs.
Right.
So when I'm frustrated, if I'm angry, like instead of leaning into that emotion, right, what am I actually believing to be true in this moment that's causing this emotion? Right? Is it real? Like, is it really real? This is based on Byron Katie's The Work, which is found in a book called Loving What Is. Like, what is mine to own? What is mine to let go of? What about this belief no longer serves me? Right? Walking through a series of questions like, why do I feel this way? Why is this person causing this feeling? If I could say anything to this person, what would I say? Why would I say it? What would it solve? And then starting to pivot in different directions. Okay, I know how I feel. I know what's frustrating me. How do they feel? What are they thinking? How would they respond to me? Is how I'm feeling, would they understand and would it be justified on their end? And then thinking, like in my home with my spouse, and then thinking, my kids, how do my kids see this? What would they think? Would they think I'm justified? Would they be confused? Would they wonder what's going on? Like you as an outsider, would you think I'm justified? Would you think my wife is justified? Would you think my business partner is justified? Would you, whoever, whatever. So the shift for me was, one, recognizing that my beliefs are nothing more than thoughts that I hold captive, right? And recognizing that through the way that I was raised, the part of, America that I was raised in, the socioeconomic background that I have, the education that I have, like all of these things compound into a worldview that is my reality, but it's not really real. It doesn't have to be. And so for me, was there any one big shift? There wasn't any one big belief other than it's possible. Because for a lot of my life, I didn't think certain things were possible for me. And that was the big shift, was that I recognized I was just telling myself a story. And as men, we get really frustrated at ourselves a lot because, again, we want to do different things and we want to feel differently. Like I know I want to be present for my kids, but I can't shut work off. I know what I'm supposed to do, but I'll be damned if my brain can't shut off. I know I need to be I know I want to be present with my wife. I forgot to do the date night. But babe, I had every intention. I thought about you today. Eventually, what I recognized, the big shift for me is it doesn't matter how I feel. It doesn't matter how I feel. Action. The shift for me was doing things. So I have myself, all my clients, we walk through daily 6 every single day, right? My buddy Garrett has what's called Core 4 in his program called Warrior. Everybody kind of has, Kevin Nations has his 4 F's. There's all these things, right? And all these mechanisms, these habits that we have to walk through, because regardless of how I'm feeling, the feeling will follow the action. And so much of what I work with clients do, whether it's building the person or building the business, right? It is cool. What are we spending our time doing? Because how you feel and think right now, it's of interest to me, but we need to modify the behavior so that the feelings, thoughts follow the action.
So part of that doing in that action, a lot of what I walked through and a lot of what I help guys walk through is verbal affirmations and things. So there's a certain set of stuff that you've got to be able to minister to yourself by speaking things out loud.
Absolutely.
Just thinking things. And it reminded me of a book, Psycho-Cybernetics.
Yep.
Where your subconscious brain's job is to prove whatever you tell it. Mm-hmm. So when you say things are not possible, like you said, your brain doesn't care. It's going to prove it's not possible.
Yeah.
And you had to change that story. So what story are you telling yourself so your brain can work on proving that thing for you, which helps you move into those actions, which helps you move. And what I found with so many men is that belief level, like you're saying, isn't there. They don't trust themselves. They don't believe in themselves. And it's this action that has to happen of every day, every morning. I want you speaking these things out loud to yourself.
And writing them down.
You're going to start to believe it.
Writing them down.
Yeah.
And can we take it? Can we take it a layer deeper into spiritual development?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a guy and he's in a cave and he hears this voice and he says, I want you to go tell the people of Israel who I am. Like, I want you to go tell Pharaoh who I am. And he's like, well, who are you? I am. You want me to go tell Pharaoh? Okay, but what? Like who? I am that I am.
What's your bio?
Right? Yeah. Like, no, I mean, like 160 characters or less. That's fine. Just but who are you? What's the problem you solve? Who do you solve it for? And how do you solve it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I am. The really fascinating part about Jesus to me isn't about all the miracles. It's not all about all of that. I think that's really fascinating to me, and like trying to prove that through history and as somebody who has studied like theology academically, like all that's very fascinating to me. What is the most fascinating to me is a man that transcends his own identity as a man, that he understands that like the God part is the I am part, the being, right? Mm-hmm. And the that which follows is everything that we've assigned to ourselves. Man, husband, father, producer, right? Provider, whatever. Failure, right? Screw up, loser, all of these things. Before any of that was I am. Before any of that, like we have to say I am to describe anything about ourselves.
Right.
So when we get into the affirmation piece, so many times, so many of us will say affirmations like, this year, I will be this. I will accomplish this. I will do this. The problem is subconsciously, when you're saying I will do something, what are you currently telling your brain?
It's not there yet.
I am not there. And so your brain then, like, your brain will just default to, well, I want to keep that pattern. I don't want to go to the new pattern. So it is very, very important when we speak affirmations, when we speak life, we speak it in the present tense as if it already exists, like it is assigned to us. I am an amazing father. I am an amazing husband. I am divorced. I am worth loving. I am worthy. I am successful. I am wealthy. I am abundant. I am strong. I am powerful. I am caring. I am forgiving. I am forgiven. Like these I am statements are so powerful because then it puts our subconscious in the position of saying, okay, well, this is who I say I am. And then the trick is that our actions then have to match that. Who do I say that I am? Because out of the abundance of saying who I am, like these are the actions that will reflect that who I say that I am. So I have to, if this is who I say I am, then what do those actions need to look like? So in those statements, we have to write down the things that we say that person does. We have to start living those out while we speak it, because our brain will always say that we're not those things.
Absolutely.
The cognitive, that's where the cognitive dissonance, that's where the, right, either the skills gap or the cognitive dissonance comes into play, the imposter syndrome. How do we eliminate that? We do the thing that affirms that which we say we are long enough that the voice has no foundation to stand on, because you're not the voice in your head, or voices for some of us, right? Like, because if the voice is talking, who's listening? Like, we're listening, we're the observer, we're the one who gets to decide what it is that we believe. So stop listening to the voice. The voice is only there to back up what you say you believe.
Absolutely. And the big part, the affirmations that I walk my men through is, what does God say about you first? Is I don't want you to build your identity on what you think or feel. Those are lies. Those are deceitful. Yeah. They can change in a matter of minutes or moments. Yeah. What does God say about you first? And that's where I start with all of my men, is foundational. The I am. What does he say about you? And you're going to keep saying this, and you're going to write it down, that we have them write down also, until you start to believe it. And when you start to believe it, it becomes, and we talked about mentorship, but this bar gets set. And when you have something to live up to, and you have this standard, this like greatness that is being spoken over you. I was talking with my buddy, Corey Huddleston, and he was talking about, he takes a lot of the neighborhood kids he's noticed are fatherless. So him and his boy, they hop on their mountain bikes and they go cruising around, and he invites these kind of orphaned kids almost. And he was telling this story, how one of them wanted to take this shortcut. They're on this path down in Texas, and they're riding their bikes, and this kid wanted to take the easy way. And he instantly, don't you get back on this trail. Don't you dare go there. Don't you dare cheat yourself. Don't you ever do this to yourself where you choose the easy way out instead of earning it and doing the work and putting it in. And he was just using these life lessons, it's like everyday kind of moments to help speak into these children. But it was setting this bar of excellence. I had a mentor growing up that used to have a phrase. He said, excellence is the standard, grace is the word. Always try for excellence, realizing you're very, very, very rarely going to be perfect. Give yourself grace in those moments, but excellence is that standard. And that we have to have that bar, I believe, set for us sometimes until we can learn to set those things for ourselves.
Yeah.
And again, that comes with changing that thinking and changing those belief patterns. But for me, it all comes down to, what does God say about me first? That's how I came out of my pit, my rock bottom. I had to figure out, because what I thought was not working. What do you say, Lord? Like when I was done being mad, when I was done cussing his name, when I was done, throwing my little temper tantrum here on earth.
Yeah.
All right, teach me. What do you say about me? And let me start believing that. And it took a while. When that happened, when all that shift happened in my mind and in my heart, most importantly, everything changed. My marriage took off. My business quadrupled. I mean, things just started like boom, 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 because that foundation. I think so many times, and I actually was reading where the advent of self-help, and it even goes back to like Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends, Influence People.
Yeah.
When self-help came on, faith took a hard right, because we're no longer seeking God to help validate that foundation. It's like, I can do it. I can figure this out. I can serve. I can, go through all the books. I can learn. I can get the academics. And so it's kind of interesting to pair those together again, when for so long it feels like, well, no, I don't need anybody else to tell me, because I'm a self-made man. I can do this. I can figure this out. I can read enough. I can study enough. I can try enough of the wrong answers to get the right ones. It's like, why get revelation? Like, I don't know. I can ramble on and on about that, but just setting that bar, like, I guess for you and your family, your children, how do you take what you teach men, what you teach, for business, for purpose? How do you set that up for the next generations coming? You've got 3 beautiful babies coming up.
It's funny when people used to ask me, like, what's the legacy? Like, what do you, what's the goal? What's the end game? It used to be 10 million lives. Like, I want to impact 10 million people. It was true in ministry. It became true in coaching. And I recognized that even like in my marriage now, like I started reverting back to the same things that got me in trouble in ministry, which is, okay, I know I'm going to be done at 6, but like 6 is 4 on the West Coast. So I really need to be done at 7, but really like I need to be done at 8, because some people work. So they need that extra hour. So I need to connect with them after they get off work at 5, so if I could just be done by 8, and I'll turn my phone on silent, but I'm going to keep it on the nightstand. And hold on. Just let me finish this post real quick. Just hold on, just real quick.
I'm almost done.
I'm almost done. And I recognize that the greatest gift that I'm going to give my kids, the greatest lesson, is presence.
TIME.
Yeah, complete presence. And understanding that like the 10 million people, like that was the goal, right? Like that was the MO, that was the thing. And about 4 months ago, mind you, like I took a time off from the church. Like I worked in the church. I served. I mean, you could not out-serve me. When I stepped out of ministry, I had 7 titles. Like I was doing it. And then I took a break. because I didn't even have any cheap grace to offer myself. I was frustrated. I was mad at God. Like I went through a season like everybody on the internet through this like experiential, expansive spirituality of like, what is God? And God is nothing more than a belief that I hold, and a belief is nothing more than a thought. So what if my thoughts are wrong? What if my thoughts aren't wrong? What if it's just an evolution? And which is really popular, and I get it. And it works for some people. I get it. Like, I'm not knocking it. Like, that was my journey.
Mm-hmm.
And a few months ago, I started to have a turning in, like, it's funny, our 7-year-old yesterday after church, because we are back in church now, and that's part of the story, says that, did you know that you could have a heart of stone? Most people are walking around with stones in their hearts. That's so heavy, so heavy. And I'm like, yeah, I know. So long, Dad had a stone in his heart, and we're back going to what you love, because God needed to do a work in my heart to remove that stone. You had a stone. It did. How did it get there? Me. Not knowing how to navigate through seasons that I tried to flippantly walk other people through with no experience. Me. It's always me.
Mm-hmm.
And now the legacy is, I want it anytime anyone comes up to my wife or my kids and they say, okay, listen, I know he's big talk on social media. He's got a lot of followers. He's got a lot of people. Like, we get that, but like, I mean, but really, how is he? Is he as good? Like, is he as good as he is on social media? Like, is he that good? I want them to be able to say, no, he's better. Like, you don't even get to see the man that he is, because you get to see a couple posts a day. You see how he leads others. You should see him in our home.
There you go.
So for me, it's being fully present. It's as much as I don't want to, because it's just a habit of convenience and distraction. Like, no, at 6:00, I put my phone upstairs in my bedroom and I leave it alone, and I'm just fully present. That at any point in time, because our kids do charter school, which means they do online school. So they're at home, which is a bit chaotic because I work from home. But if at any point in time they come into my office and need something, they know, like, you don't just barge into Dad's office because he's typically on calls. But if they come in, that I know that they need something, and that I will stop. I will hard stop. And all my clients know this. And I will pivot, and I will give them my job, this business. It does not come before you. Now, obviously there's respect there, and they respect me and they respect what I do. But leading by example, making sure that I'm dating my wife, making sure that they see that I'm very affectionate with her, making sure that they see that I put her on a pedestal. Because there was a season where, like, I was traveling all the time. I didn't. Like, we're celebrating, like, and you think, like, oh, like, how long? Like, we've been married a year. Like, this happened within the time frame of a year, right? So this guy who is so busy leading others and leading this big community of men and leading men and women, like, it grew so fast that I didn't know how to manage it. And so now it's taking a step back, now learning how to manage it, putting people in place, putting guardrails in place so that there are no more gutter balls, right? Having the men in my life who, again, are further than I am, to be able to keep that accountability in check. So how do I do it how do I ensure with my family? I make sure that I'm better than the man that I say that I am online. I make sure that the non-negotiables that my wife and I have set up in our marriage stay consistent. And I make sure that the model of life that I have set for myself stays consistent. One of the things that I remember from my grandpa, because I was raised I was raised primarily by my grandparents when I was a kid. I was raised by a single dad. When I entered into, like, the end of my 4th grade year, he worked all the time. Like, he single dad trying to provide. Like, he was just hustling.
Mm-hmm.
And grandparents, which was amazing because I got an experience that most people don't get, right? It's just a different way of being brought up. But I can remember like my grandfather always getting up before everyone. And he was always like drinking black Folgers coffee and reading the Bible. And I never understood it. Like I never understood it growing up. I was like, why? Why would you like read the Bible without being told to? Like, why? We had to read the Bible. And I'm like, why would you
in trouble, Grandpa?
Like, why would you just do that? Did Nanny get on to you? Are you always in trouble? Like, you're always reading Proverbs. Why are you always reading Proverbs? Now every morning I read Proverbs. Right? And it means more to me now because it's not my job as a pastor. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel like it's something I have to do because it's part of my job description. I do it because I want my kids, like as much as I want it for myself, I want my kids to see it. I want my kids to experience it. But then I also want them to experience like, hey, mom and dad have arguments and here's how we resolve those. And hey, sometimes dad doesn't get it right. And here's how I own that. Hey, here's how dad fails. And here's how I own that. And here's how I get better. Right? Here's how mom doesn't always get it right. And here's how she evolves. And here's how she gets better. So being open and also recognizing that it's not my responsibility to raise a good boy and a good couple girls. It's my responsibility to remind these kids that they are heirs of a royal lineage and to prepare them to be responsible, productive, healthy. Again, I didn't use the term good because I think we just assign that to too much stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Whole, loving, strong, compassionate human beings who are successful.
Yeah, I just now, December, my oldest daughter turned 13. So I'm going into a different phase of life.
I was a youth pastor for 10 years. Like, and God bless, man. God bless. We got an 11-year-old. Yeah.
She's our voice of reason. Like she's always been that girl that if Nana and Papa are letting the kids watch something they're not supposed to, this ain't flying. Like she's always been that voice of reason.
You got one of those.
Yeah. It's amazing.
That's awesome.
And she's the oldest, so it's easier.
Yeah.
You mentioned like your feelings and like, why am I feeling this way? Or why, kind of going back to that a little bit. That is something that we are actively, very intentionally working with her on, is when she has these moments where that rage builds up and that frustration builds up and these crazy emotions that become so powerful. It's to not just hide them, not just ignore them, not be shameful that they happened, but to seek why they're there. And for kids who are going through changes, her body's changing, she's going through all different things of her life and stuff.
Totally.
Like, okay, can you take time to ask the Holy Spirit, why am I feeling like this? Is there something do I have like this bitterness? Is there something that is just making me so mad at my little brother right now that I need to forgive, that I need to get over? What's the root, not the symptom? Don't be shameful of the symptom until you figure out what the root is going on in that life. And so we had this drive and it was a really, really cool moment for us. I do prayer drives. So when I need to hear clearly, I hop in my car and I head to the mountains.
Okay.
My mind is enough distracted with driving that it doesn't think about all the crap of life, that I can just pray and I can hear it. I can just be one. So I brought my daughter with me and we go driving. And oftentimes when I do, I'll make a post in the group and be like, hey, going out for a drive, what can I pray for you for?
Mm-hmm.
People will start listing off their things. So I told my daughter, I'm like, all right, Lainey, this person is asking for prayer for her sons. And they've just moved, they're having trouble, new schools, all this kind of stuff. I said, just pray, ask the Holy Spirit right now what he says about this situation. And then just tell me what you get. And so we're praying and she's quiet and she's, turned her body away from me. She's looking out the windows, we're driving, really focusing. And it's just been a while. I'm like, all right, you getting anything? And she's like, no. I said, you're doubting what you heard, aren't you? I said, you don't believe that God's talking to you. And she's like, okay. So she told me, she's like, I see this scene. It's a little boy. He's playing soccer. He just scored a goal. The whole team's rushing up to him. They're cheering him. Everybody's happy. He's just so excited. I go, that's the Holy Spirit talking to you right now. And so I voice messaged the person that gave me the response. I'm like, hey, this is don't know if it means anything to you. I'm teaching my daughter to hear from the Holy Spirit. This is what she
Yeah.
saw. She comes back. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. I know exactly this is where this is from. My kids love soccer. We're thinking about getting them started soccer in this thing. It was such this moment of encouragement for the people requesting the prayer. But it was this foundational building moment. I can just see it in my mind, like this big block just got set down on her foundation of trusting and hearing in the Holy Spirit, knowing that she will get answers when she asks. That has just been such a huge intentional part of us bringing up our kids to make sure that they can handle everything that is going on, that they're not reaching out to a boyfriend, that they're not reaching out to their best friend all the time to get always the answers, that they can go to the source and then they can judge everything else off of that. And that's just been a huge part for us, for intentionally raising our kids and intentionally trying to set them up for real life. Like, what does it look like when it hits the fan and it's just not going well and mom and dad are angry and, you know, stressing over whatever it is? Where do you draw that confidence? If it's coming from people, it's always can be deceived. If it's, you know, you're going to have people with well intentions, but sometimes they just don't know.
Right. And
have a
again,
base.
like beliefs, right? Like based off of their beliefs, based off their experience. Like the whole idea of like misery loves company. It's just those patterns that create negative emotion will always foster more negative emotion. Right. And I think you're absolutely right there. And I love that you're taking the time to foster that kind of growth and intuition within your own family. I think that's beautiful.
It's,
really beautiful.
I waited way too long in life to figure this part out. So, all right. I can help you guys get this so much sooner, man. You're gonna just be able to do so much more than I ever did.
You know, and what's beautiful, like yesterday, because, you know, our kids, well, one of our kids, our 7-year-old, our 11-year-old she has CP, cerebral palsy, Asperger's, which is autism spectrum, and seizure disorder. So she's 11, but she is probably closer to 5 in a lot of ways. Does not like schoolwork, does not like reading, just doesn't like anything to do with like that kind of academic study. Our 7-year-old though, like reading 5th grade level, just off the charts, just loves reading, which has been a really interesting dynamic to try and balance in and of itself with 2 kids, with one being older, but the other like really, really excelling in academics. But yesterday after church, we're having the conversation of rocks in our hearts. And it says, Dad, I think I'd like my own Bible now. And we've just been waiting, right? Like, I'm not here to like give you a Bible and tell you have to read it. Like, again, I don't want my experience of like, you're in trouble, go read your Bible and pray. Right? Like it's not supposed to be punishment. It's like, she also plays the drums. And last night she was, you know, she had a singing recital, like singing and drums. Like, you're not in trouble, so go play your drums. You're not in trouble, so go like practice your vocal. Like, it's not that. Right? We want to make sure that it's always fostered out of growth and love and abundance. And so we're waiting. Like, if and when she wants a Bible, we'll get her own Bible. So yesterday was that day. So we went and got it. Same Bible I had as a kid, Adventure Bible. I got mine when I was 10. She got hers at 7. So I pulled mine out yesterday. And mine was, dude, it was like, you know, like Pimp My Ride. Like mine was like Pimp My Bible. Like I had the tabs. You know what I'm saying? It was like I have my name foiled on it. You open it up, and I had forgotten, like you open it up, I had like the sinner's prayer. I had the Roman road of salvation. Like I had all this stuff taped to my little evangelist. It was such a beautiful moment, kind of like what you're sharing here, which I know that so many of your listeners will resonate with, these moments that are like an affirmation of, okay, like I'm in my own head a lot. I don't get everything right. Like I've got a lot of negative self-talk that I deal with. I've got a lot of impulses and I've got a lot of ways in which I'm trying to be the man that I said that I'd be. But I got that right. You know?
Yeah. I mean, planting those seeds, it's everything for me. And this is a whole nother conversation, but the hustle grind, I'm like determined work, determined action. Don't hustle away your family. Don't hustle your way through a broken marriage and a broken family.
No.
Like, be determined, be intentional. But what drives me, and I don't want to, again, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole if I go too far into this, but people who are building a life for their family. A lot of times within the entrepreneurial communities, same thing happens in the corporate world, is you get so dedicated on what you're doing to build for this some sweet day that never shows up.
Totally.
And that's also weird kind of things about setting goals. They never happen. By the time you get close, you're resetting that goal to something bigger. Like you never actually catch that rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
But taking that time to live the life that you want to live 10 years from now, live it now with the resources you have now. It'll get better as you get better, and it'll get more extravagant as you get more, and you earn more and that kind of stuff. But don't wait for life to happen and pass you by thinking that there's going to be this day where you're on the beach with your family and everything is in alignment.
Right.
Go on the beach now and do hot dogs. Don't do steak, do whatever it is, but live the life that you're wanting to live, that you're speaking about and that you're dream building with your family. Live it now. Live it within your means, but live it now and continue to push and continue to grow, and then watch that grow and expand. But don't leave them on the train station dock and you take off and I'll be back for you. I'll send for you later. Like I just see so many people making that mistake.
Yeah.
But it's just but I want to ask you, I know you're too humble and you don't want to talk about your own stuff so much, but embrace the lion and what you're doing. Like brag on yourself a little bit and tell everybody what it is that you've got going on and how you're impacting this world with that.
Yeah. So ETL was born out of, again, this search, right? Like we talk about this idea of like man's search for meaning. For me, it was a search for meaning. And originally it was embrace the lion of the tribe of Judah, but that was too long to put on a t-shirt. It doesn't really roll off the tongue. And I recognized that there were so many people who did not have a really positive church experience and didn't have a positive, response to the idea of Christianity, that I didn't want to limit the conversation, because I don't care where you're at or what you believe, right? In order to help you move forward. I'm not here to, again, be a pastor. I am here to be a man who is strong in his own convictions. And if that leads to a conversation through my life looking a little different than yours, cool, then we'll have that conversation, right? And that's proven to be far more fruitful than knocking on doors, but who knew?
Relationships? Are you kidding me?
It's weird. It's a novel concept. But since I started ETL and stepped out of the church community, we've it's grown to a community of 4,500 guys and another community of just shy of 11,000 men and women leading on a weekly basis. And so I do a few different things. I travel, I speak, right? Still sharing a message of hope and of potential and of reconciliation and of what is possible for people in turning their pain to power, right? Like my thing is, I've been to hell. Like I have been there in my own life. I've experienced a depth of pain that is unfathomable. So I'm not afraid to go with you, right? It's not afraid.
Know the way.
Yeah. I took the keys back. We're good. We're good. And if I can't, I know the one who can. Right. And so we have those communities, and those are free communities. Right. And so you can go online and check out, embracethelion.org. And then outside of that, I do, what we would call one-to-one coaching. So I walk alongside both men and women in helping them to, again, like they got a high vision on their lives, but they don't really know what to do with that. Or maybe they know what to do with that and they're exploring it and they're successful, but it's not making sense in every area, right? And so there's this conversation of we're sacrificing, we're burning the candle at all ends and nothing's moving forward. So we have 4 pillars, which are head, heart, health, and habits. Head is how you treat your mind and what you think. Heart is how you treat your relationships. Health is how you treat your body. And then habits are how you treat your time. If you think of that as a table, it's got 4 legs. As you balance influence and impact and income on that table, if one is out of alignment, you're going to either be trying to juggle and catch everything as it comes crashing down, or you're constantly going to be putting shims and going back and like like you'll get really jacked one year, but your bank account will go into the negative. But then you'll work on the business and the business will be great. And you've got this momentum in the gym, but your family's fallen to the wayside, right? Yeah. And so, but then you focus on getting the family all back together, but then you realize spiritually you don't even know what you believe anymore. And so it's in creating sustainability. I don't really believe in balance because I think there's a lot of ebb and flow to life.
Seasons.
Yeah. But creating sustainability so that people can effectively scale their lives while simultaneously scaling their endeavors. So I do work with a lot of business owners, do work with a lot of entrepreneurs, those who, again, are called to lead others in helping them not only find their voice and cultivate that voice, but also create the systems that allow them to do that in a way that gives them back why they started in the first place, which is time.
Yeah, absolutely. That is awesome. I know we're pressing up against time here, so I just wanted to make sure that people knew how to get in touch with you.
We could go formal.
Alignment, yeah.
But
go
listen, just find me, Cody Jefferson. You want to find me? Just find me on Facebook or Instagram. Cody at embracetheline.org is my email. But like, let's be informal about this. Just shoot me, dude. I love stories. At the end of the day, all I am is a storyteller. Right? I'm telling a better story in my life every single day. And I'm the one holding the pen and writing it. I help people take the pen back from everything that has taken it from them. And I help them write a better story. But that starts with me knowing your story. So I would love to hear it. I would love to hear your story. I would love to hear where life is going amazing right now. And I would love to know where you are completely hopeless right now.
Yeah. And
shoot me a message.
You said something earlier, and I think I want to leave this as just like a final nugget, but you want to be that better man at home than you are online.
Yeah.
So everybody listening, make sure you are not giving your best to social media.
Yeah.
Make sure that your best is not coming across there, that your best is reserved for your family. I mean, yes, there's a part about building relationships and sharing, and that's what I love about your posts and your online presence is a lot of it is behind the scenes. It's pulling back the curtain. It's just stories. And you're relating it, but you're not giving your life to that following.
Right.
Your life is being given to your family. And I appreciate that about you. And that's a very honorable thing. And I hope everybody kind of can follow that model as your best should not be on social media. If that's where you are winning the most in life, then that's not what's going to be sustainable for you and your behind the scenes, your family, your endeavors.
Totally.
Don't win on social media if you're not winning at home.
Yeah. And success gets to look different to different people. Like, give yourself permission to define success in the ways that you define success. Right now, there are certain benchmarks, right? If you're able physically, there are certain benchmarks of success. Like your body will look a certain way, right? If you're treating it well. Your bank account, there is a measure to success there, right? We can measure that. So
it's in colors, right? Black and
right.
red.
Yeah. It's in right. So understand that while the metrics of success, a successful marriage looks a certain way and it feels a certain way and it carries a certain tone about it. So there are measures to success, but there are also freedoms in that success, right? For some people, it is, some of my close friends drive supercars. And they can afford it. They love it. Like, that's part of who they are and what they do. I love old Harleys. Like, I'm a mechanic of 16 years, right? Like, I grew up wrenching on things. I managed a garage in high school. Like, that's success. Success to me is the time to go outside and tear down the carburetor on my Harley and show my kids how to do it. Yeah. Okay, so, but online, that doesn't look like success. You look like a mechanic, right? Well, it's because I want to be. All right. So allow yourself the freedom that, like, success doesn't, there are certain markers and benchmarks for sure, but also that it gets to look like and feel like and be experienced however you want it to be experienced. Success isn't a one size fits all package. And it's definitely not all the things that you see online. Not all that glitters is gold.
No, I'm a firm believer, and I speak this 100 times, is everybody has their own unique recipe. You can only be you, and you trying to be somebody else is only going to turn into a counterfeit and a fraud, and everybody's going to realize that you're not being authentic. So
totally
find your recipe.
What a game to have to continually pretend to be someone else. Like, we get exhausting. Mm-hmm. Catfishing yourself.
Yeah, that's true. That's a funny. That's a good moment. There you go. Quit catfishing yourself.
Come on.
I love it. I thank you, man. I appreciate your time, brother. I know you're a busy You got plenty on your plate, lots of juggling, lots of things going on. But I love these kinds of conversations. I love to kind of peel back and maybe not ask the normal questions that everybody wants to know. And, I can just read on your website, but I'd love to hear the heart. I'd love to hear the passion. I love to hear the dirt. I love to hear the journey, and all of that kind of stuff. So I really appreciate you joining us on the episode, and everybody, find you online at Cody Jefferson, the embrace the lion that I love. It like resonates with me. I love that term.
Thanks, man. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to serve your community. I love what you're building. Mitch, if there's any way I can support you further, man, I think what you're doing is important. I think it's necessary. And I think that every man that is listening to this podcast, I know that your group is attached to your Facebook page. And you probably have in your intro or outro how to get in contact with you, but join his group, join his community. If you're a man looking for a place to belong, his community is the place where you can find it.
Awesome, brother. Appreciate you, man. Thank you much.
You've been listening to the Wisdom and Wilderness Podcast. Real men, real life, real faith. The newest podcast for men with your host, Mitch London. We'll see you next time.